The day the world stood still, a total decimation of the living world. The cessation of Earth's rotation is not merely a scenario for a science fiction horror movie. It is a fundamental violation of the physical laws that have sustained life on our planet for over 4 billion years. If the Earth were to suddenly stop spinning, the consequences would unfold in stages. From instantaneous mechanical destruction to a long-term climatic apocalypse. Below is a detailed breakdown of what would happen to our cradle if its rotation fell silent forever. 1. The kinetic shock, the inertial hammer. At the equator, the Earth rotates at a speed of approximately 1,670 kilometers per hour, 1,037 miles per hour. We don't feel this because everything around us, mountains, oceans, and the atmosphere, is moving at the same speed. But if the solid crust stops in an instant, Newton's first law of motion, inertia, takes over. Supersonic flight. Every object not anchored into the bedrock, people, cars, buildings, topsoil, would continue moving eastward at 460 meters per second. This is faster than the speed of sound. Cities wouldn't just collapse, they would be erased, transformed into clouds of supersonic debris. Crustal displacement. The lithosphere itself would experience monstrous stress. The velocity difference between the stopping crust and the still-moving mantle could trigger global earthquakes of magnitude 12 or higher, reshaping continents in seconds. 2. Atmospheric storm, the scorching gale. The atmosphere possesses mass and momentum. It will not stop along with the ground. The global hurricane. A windstorm of 1,600 kilometers per hour would emerge. For context, the strongest Category 5 hurricanes have winds around 250 kilometers per hour. This inertial wind would scour everything in its path, from massive forests to the very upper layers of rock. Plasma heating. The friction between the stationary ground and the supersonic air would generate a colossal amount of heat. In some regions, the air would ignite, reaching temperatures that instantly incinerate organic matter. A portion of the atmosphere might even be blown into outer space due to the sheer pressure. 3. The migration of oceans, flood and exposure. Earth is an oblate spheroid, flattened at the poles due to the centrifugal force of its rotation. This force holds a massive water bulge about 8 kilometers 5 miles high along the equator. Equatorial collapse. Without rotation, centrifugal force vanishes. Gravity becomes the sole dominant force. Since the poles are closer to the Earth's center of mass, gravity is stronger there. The Great Water Migration. The oceans would migrate from the equator toward the poles. This would create two massive polar oceans, separated by a continuous mega-continent ring around the equator. The Mariana Trench would become a dry, deep valley, while countries like Canada, the UK, and Russia would be entirely submerged. 4. Thermodynamic hell, 6 months of fire, 6 months of ice. Once the dust settles, a new climatic reality sets in. If the Earth does not rotate relative to the stars, one day now lasts exactly 1 year, the time it takes to orbit the Sun. The day side? 6 months of uninterrupted solar radiation would raise temperatures to plus 100 degrees Celsius, 212 degrees Fahrenheit, and higher. The polar oceans would begin to boil, creating a thick, suffocating dome of steam. Life here would be impossible. The night side. On the other side, eternal night reigns for 6 months. Temperatures would drop to minus 80 degrees Celsius to minus 100 degrees Celsius. atmospheric moisture would fall as meters of ice, followed eventually by the freezing of carbon dioxide itself. Dry ice. The twilight zone. The only habitable place would be a narrow Terminator strip of permanent sunset between light and shadow. However, constant, violent storms would rage there due to the extreme pressure differentials between hemispheres. 5. Death of the magnetic shield. Cosmic sterilization. Earth's magnetic field is generated by a dynamo effect in the outer core, which depends directly on the planet's rotation. Dynamo stoppage. Without rotation, the convection currents in the liquid iron core would be disrupted. The magnetic field would rapidly weaken and disappear. Solar wind. Without a magnetic shield, Earth becomes defenseless against radiation. The solar wind would slowly strip away the remaining atmosphere. The surface would be sterilized by hard UV rays and cosmic radiation. Eventually, Earth would look like Mars, an airless, radioactive wasteland. The day the world stood still. Part 2. The century of silence and beyond. 100 years after the rotation stops, Earth is no longer the planet we once knew. It is no longer a dynamic, living world, but a two-faced spheroid frozen in space. If humanity managed to survive the initial decades of inertial chaos, supersonic storms, and the Great Migration, the civilization of 2126 would face the final, permanent transformation of the biosphere and planetary geology. Here is the forecast for the next 100 years and into the distant future. 1. 100 years later, the era of the twilight states. By the year 2126, the Earth's surface is divided into 3 distinct zones, where life is radically different in each. The day hemisphere. The scorch. The center of the day side is a radiation-blasted wasteland. Temperatures remain stable above 100 degrees Celsius, 212 degrees Fahrenheit. The oceans in this region have evaporated, leaving behind salt flats kilometers thick. The sky is a permanent murky orange due to the dense haze of steam and dust. Life is only possible in deep, automated subterranean mines. The night hemisphere. The vault. Here, eternal darkness and cold down to minus 100 degrees Celsius, minus 148 degrees Fahrenheit, reign supreme. Former continents are covered in atmospheric snow, frozen moisture and solidified carbon dioxide. Human settlements here resemble lunar bases, pressurized domes powered by nuclear fusion reactors. The Terminator Zone, the ribbon of life. A narrow band a few hundred kilometers wide where the sun is perpetually frozen on the horizon. Here, temperatures fluctuate between 0 degrees Celsius and 30 degrees Celsius. This is where the remnants of civilization are concentrated. However, life is a constant struggle against the permanent Terminator winds. Supersonic gales created as hot air from the day side rushes to fill the vacuum of the frozen night side. 2. Geological rebirth, the emergence of the megacontinent. After a century, the redistribution of the world's water is complete. Polar oceans. The North and South poles have become 2 isolated water basins, tens of kilometers deep. The equatorial belt. The entire equator has transformed into a continuous mountain range and dry plateau. The former ocean floor has become the new dry land. The shape of the world. Without rotation, the Earth slowly begins to lose its equatorial bulge. Gravity is gradually squeezing the planet back into a more perfect sphere. This triggers centennial earthquakes, massive tectonic adjustments that will continue for millennia as the planet's crust settles into its new shape. 3. 500 to 1,000 years later. atmospheric collapse. In the long term, the primary threat to survival is not temperature, but the loss of the air itself. The death of the shield. Without the rotation of the core, Earth's magnetic field completely fails. The solar wind now hits the upper atmosphere without resistance. Sputtering, high-energy solar particles literally kick oxygen and nitrogen molecules into deep space. Within 1,000 years, atmospheric density could drop by 20 to 30%. As pressure falls, water begins to boil at even lower temperatures, accelerating the desiccation of the planet. Radiation background. The surface becomes so radioactive that even a brief walk outside without a lead-lined pressurized suit is fatal. 4. 10,000 years and beyond, the lunar drama. The relationship between Earth and its moon changes forever. The orbital break. Previously, Earth rotated faster than the moon orbited it, pushing the moon further away by 3.8 centimeters per year. Now, the stationary Earth creates tidal friction that slows the moon down. The death spiral. The moon will begin to slowly spiral inward toward Earth. Over millions of years, it will reach the Roche limit, the critical distance where Earth's gravity becomes stronger than the gravity holding the moon together. The rings of Earth. The moon will be torn apart into billions of fragments, forming a ring system similar to Saturn's. These rings will cast a massive shadow over the planet, cooling it further and making the already chaotic climate even more unpredictable. 5. The final result. The eyeball planet. In a million years, Earth will have fully transitioned into an eyeball planet. From space, it looks like a giant eye, a frozen pupil of ice on the dark side, a scorched iris of desert on the day side, and a thin, battered ring of ruins where a great civilization once thrived. The mathematics of survival tell us that without rotation, Earth loses its primary function, the distribution of energy. It transforms from a living, breathing organism into two dead hemispheres linked by an eternal storm.